Hello everyone, welcome to the Law of Torts lecture series. In today's session, we will discuss about introduction of Law of Torts, meaning and origin of torts, definition of torts, nature of torts, and also we will see tort versus crime, tort versus contract, and other important basics. Now let us look at introduction of Law of Torts. Law of torts is a branch of civil law that deals with situations where one person causes harm, injury, or loss to another person due to a wrongful act or omission. When such harms occur, the injured person has a legal right to seek compensation from the person responsible. Therefore, tort law is mainly concerned with protection of legal rights and providing remedies when those rights are violated. The main objective of tort law is not to punish the wrongdoer but to compensate the victim for the injury suffered. The law tries to place the injured person as far as possible in the same position which they would have been if the wrong had not happened. In this way, tort law promotes fairness and justice between individuals in society. An important feature of tort law is that the duties involved are imposed by law itself and not created by an agreement between parties. These duties are generally owed towards everyone in the society, not just specific individuals. Because of this, even strangers can become legally liable to each other if one person's conduct causes harm to another in violation of a legal duty. For example, if a driver drives carelessly and hits a pedestrian on the road, the injured person can claim damages from the driver. There was no contract between them earlier, but liability still arises because the driver failed to exercise reasonable care, which is a duty imposed by law. Now let us look at meaning and origin of tort. The word tort comes from the Latin word tortum, which means twisted or wrongful conduct. Twisted means it is a broken. In legal language, tort refers to behavior that is not correct according to law and which causes harm or injury to another person. Whenever a person acts in a way that violates someone else's legal rights, it may become a tort. A tort can happen either because a person does something wrong or because a person fails to do something that they were legally expected to. In law, we call these acts and omissions. Both situations can create liability if they result in harm to another person. Therefore, responsibility in tort law is not limited only to actions but also includes negligence or carelessness. The basic idea behind tort law is that every person living in a society must respect the rights of the others. People are expected to act carefully and responsibly so that their behavior does not cause injury to others. When someone fails to follow the standards of behavior and cause any harm, the law provides a remedy to the injured person. For example, if a person leaves a deep pit open on the road without any warning signs and someone falls into it and gets injured, the person responsible may be liable in the tort. The liability arises because there was a failure to take reasonable care to prevent harm. Now let us look at few definitions of tort. Different legal scholars have tried to define the meaning of tort in order to explain its nature clearly. One well-known definition is given by Salmond. Remember this, Salmond. As per Salmond, a tort is a civil wrong for which the remedy is an action for unliquidated damages and it does not include breach of contract or trust. This definition highlights that the tort law mainly deals with compensation for civil injuries. Another important definition is given by Winfield, who describes tort as the breach of a legal duty, primarily fixed by law, where such law breaches gives rise to a right to claim damages. This definition focuses on the idea that the duty exists because the law imposes it, not because the parties agree to it. Therefore, tort liability is independent of contracts. Both definitions make it clear that tort law is concerned with violation of legal rights and providing remedies in the form of damages. The injured person does not need to prove any agreement between parties. It is enough to show that a legal duty existed and that duty was breached, causing harm. For example, if a shopkeeper sells a defective electrical appliance and it causes injury to a customer, the shopkeeper may be liable in tort. The liability arises because the law expects seller to ensure reasonable safety of goods sold to the consumers. Now let us look at nature of tort law. Tort law is mainly compensatory in nature, which means its primary purpose is to provide monetary compensation to the injured persons. The law tries to place the victim as far as possible in the same position in which they would have been if the wrong had not happened. It is not mainly concerned with punishment, but with restoring fairness between the parties. Another important feature of tort law is that it is largely judge made law. This means its principles have developed over time through decisions of courts rather than through one single statute. In India also, tort law is mostly uncodified and courts rely on earlier judgments and legal principles while deciding the cases. The tort law mainly protects private individual rights. The dispute usually arises between two private persons where one claims that the other has violated their legal rights. This is different from criminal law, where the state prosecutes the offender because the wrong is considered against the society. For example, if smoke, noise, or pollution from a neighbor's property interferes with the enjoyment of your property, you may bring a tort action for nuisance and claim compensation. The purpose is to protect your private right. Now let us look at the difference between tort and the crime. A tort is a civil wrong against an individual person, while a crime is an offense against society as a whole. In tort law, the injured person brings a case against the wrongdoer to claim the compensations. In criminal law, the state takes action against the offender because the act is considered harmful to the society. The main objective of tort law is to provide compensation to the victim for the harm suffered. On the other hand, the main purpose of criminal law is to punish the offender and maintain public order. Therefore, the remedies are also different. Tort cases usually result in damages, while criminal cases may result in imprisonment, fine, or both. Another important difference is the standard of proof required in court. In tort case, liability is decided on the balance of probabilities, which means the court look at what is more likely to have happened. In criminal cases, guilt must be proved beyond reasonable doubt, which is a much stricter standard. For example, if a person assaults another person, it may lead to criminal prosecution by the state for punishment. At the same time, the victim may also file a civil suit for damages under the tort law. Both actions can take place independently. The next one is tort versus contract. A tort arises from breach of a duty imposed by law, whereas a contract arises from the breach of duties created by agreement between parties. In tort law, the duty exists because the law requires a person to act in a certain way. In contract law, the duty exists because the parties voluntarily agree to certain terms and conditions. Another important difference is that tort duties are owed to persons generally, meaning they are owed to everyone in society. In contractual duties are owed only to the parties who have entered into the agreement. Therefore, a stranger cannot usually sue a breach of contract, but a stranger may still claim damages in tort of their legal right in tort if their legal rights are violated. The nature of damages are also differs in both areas. In tort law, damages are usually unliquidated, meaning they are decided by the court depending on the facts of the case. In contract law, damages may sometimes to be predetermined by the parties or calculated based on the agreement terms. For example, if a doctor treats a patient negligently, the patient may claim compensation in tort for negligence. At the same time, there may also be a contractual relationship between the doctor and the patient. So both tort and contract liability may exist together in certain situations. The next one, constituents of tort. In order to establish liability in tort, certain essential elements must be present. The first requirement is that there must be a wrongful act or omission by the defendant. This means the defendant must have done something that violates a legal duty recognized by the law, or failed to do something that the law required them to do. The second requirement is that the plaintiff must suffer legal injury. Legal injury means violation of a legally protected right. It is important to understand that actual financial loss is not always necessary. Even if there is no monetary damage, liability may still arise if a legal right has been violated. The third requirement is that there must be a legal remedy available to the injured person. Law follows the principle that where there is a right, there must be a remedy. Without a remedy, the right would have no practical value. Therefore, courts ensure that injured persons can seek compensation when their rights are infringed. For example, if a person blocks another person's lawful access to their property, it may create tort liability. The injured person can approach the court because their legal right has been interfered with. The next one is legal damage. Legal damage means the violation of a legal right that is recognized by the law. It is one of the most important requirements for establishing liability in the tort. The law does not provide remedies for every type of harm or inconvenience. It only provides remedies when a person's legal rights are infringed. It is possible that a person may suffer actual finance loss, but still there may be no legal damage. This happens when the loss does not involve violation of any legal right. On the other hand, sometimes a person's legal right may be violated even without financial loss, and the law may still provide a remedy. Courts mainly focus on whether a legal right has been violated rather than amount of money lost. This approach ensures fairness and prevents unnecessary cases. The concept of legal damage helps courts decide whether a claim is legally valid. For example, if a business suffers loss because of healthy competition from another business, it is usually not actionable in tort because no legal right has been violated. Loss alone is not sufficient to create a liability. Now let us look at injuria sine damnum sine injuria. So these two are very important and we need to clearly understand the differences of these two principles. In tort law, an important idea is that the law protects legal rights rather than just financial losses. Sometimes a person may suffer loss but still cannot claim compensation, and sometimes a person may not suffer financial loss but can still claim remedy. This depends on whether a legal right has been violated. Two Latin principles, or we call legal maxims, help us understand this. That is, the first one is injurious sine damno and the damnum sine injuria. Injurious sine damno means violation of a legal right without actual damage or financial loss. I repeat it. Injurious in damno means violation of a legal right without actual damage or financial loss. In such cases, law provides a remedy because the person's legal right has been infringed. The principle shows that protection of right is more important than proof of monetary loss. For example, if a person has a legal right to vote, but someone illegally prevents him from voting, the person can claim remedy even though there is no financial loss to him. Another common example is trespass to land. If someone enters your property without your permission, your right is violated even if no physical damage is occurred. The next principle is damnum sine injuria, means actual loss without violation of any legal right. So here no violation for the legal right. In such situations, the law does not provide compensation because no legal right has been infringed. The loss may be real, but it is not legally actionable. For example, if a new shop opens near your business and customer starts going there, you may suffer financial loss. However, the other shopkeeper has done nothing illegal and has not violated your rights. Therefore, you cannot claim damages in tort law. Now let us look at mental elements in tort. In tort law, sometimes the mental state of the person committing the act becomes important. Mental elements include intention, malice, knowledge, and negligence. However, unlike criminal law, tort law does not always require proof of intention. In many cases, liability depends mainly on whether a person acted without reasonable care. Intention means doing an act with the purpose of causing harm, while malice means wrongful intention. Motive, on the other hand, refers to the reason behind the act. It is important to understand that even if a person has a good motive, they may still be liable if their action violates another person's legal rights. In negligence cases, intention is not necessary at all. A person may become liable simply because they failed to act carefully. Tort law focus more on conduct and its consequences rather than on the mental intention behind the act. This is one of the key differences between tort law and criminal law. For example, if a driver causes an accident because of careless driving, the driver may be liable for negligence even though there was no intention to harm anyone. The liability arises because reasonable care was not taken by the driver. Now let us look at fundamental principle of tort law. One of the most important principle of tort law is that where there is a legal right, there is a legal remedy. This means that whenever a person's legal right is violated, the law should provide some form of relief or compensation. Rights are meaningful only when they can be enforced through the courts. This principle ensures fairness and justice in society. If the law recognized right but did not provide remedies for their violation, those rights would have become useless. Therefore, tort law plays an important role in protecting individuals from wrongful conduct by the others. Courts often rely on this principle while developing new areas of tort liability. As society changes, new kinds of harm may arise, and court use this principle to ensure that victims are now left without remedies. This makes tort law flexible and capable of adapting to modern situations. For example, courts have developed remedies for environmental pollution and public safety issues based on this principle. Even if there was no specific rule earlier, courts provide relief because legal rights were affected. In the next video, we will discuss about general defenses in tort law. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.